Welcome back, Rosebuds. Today we have creepy cryptid encounters to share. You know how this works. I have 4 stories based on real-life people and their encounters, except for one that is made up. Our episodes are patterned after that old 90s show, Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. So have fun guessing which ones are true and which one is the fake. Make sure to listen all the way to the end, where I'll reveal the imposter story. With that, let's dive into our 4 creepy cryptid encounters to tell in the dark. Story number 1. What did I just encounter? My family has around 360 acres in northern Oklahoma that has been in our family since the land rush. Growing up, the family would meet there for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but as the family expanded, it was quickly outgrown. Nowadays, I'm about the only person that goes out there, and went there regularly to train with my firearms. I went there earlier this year and had an experience that shook me so badly that I haven't spoken about it until recently and will never go back there alone again. I arrived around 2 p.m. and set up my targets, but something felt off. I use an electronic headset for hearing protection that also amplifies ambient noise, and I noticed that everything seemed to stop. No wind, no bugs, no birds, nothing. Just complete and total silence, which is very unusual for the area. I run my normal drills, and as the sun starts to set, things get stranger. Odd smells like a dirty litter box plus body odor started wafting in the air. Then I noticed that a pack of coyotes were crossing the field west of me, almost as if they were consciously avoiding entering the woods nearby. Then I started hearing interference coming over my headset, and what sounded like disembodied voices speaking in an indiscernible language that I couldn't hear with the naked ear. Now I'm starting to worry. I start to gather my things, and I hear what sounds like a woman's blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. I've heard mountain lions and bobcats squaring off, which we do have on the property, but this sound was neither of those things. Around the same time, I got what I can only describe as a nauseating, omnidirectional feeling of being watched, shortly followed by very distinct footsteps trudging through the foliage in the tree line approximately 30 yards from my position. I've been an avid hunter since childhood, and I'm very familiar with the noises of the woods. The cadence of the footsteps I was hearing were indicative of a large, bipedal creature, oddly human-like. Very concerning considering I'm in the middle of a large swath of property that's 25 miles from the nearest populated area. I pull my phone out to take video, zoom in, and I start scanning the tree line with my flashlight. Standing behind a tree at the edge of the tree line was a tall, black silhouette with spindly limbs and a pale face looking directly at me. I managed to capture a great still image of it. I quickly grabbed my range bag and made a run towards my truck. I got about 50 yards from the truck. There's a light post on our property. It's hooked up to the county power and has never turned off in the 20 years I've been going here. It suddenly cuts off. Now I'm blindly running in the direction I believe my truck is in, while I hit the unlock button on my fob to find the lights. I get in my truck, speed off, and as I'm watching in the rear view, the light post turns back on. I apologize for the long story, but I'm finally ready to get this out in the open for interpretation. I tend to think of myself as a rational person that doesn't necessarily believe in the woo-woo kind of stuff. Although my mother described me as being sensitive and somewhat gravitating towards energies as a child, I was doing everything I could to rationalize or come up with a reasonable explanation for the things I had just experienced. But I have no explanation. The kind of fear this experience put into me was unlike any kind of fear I've ever felt. Story number 2, Goat Man. Here in North Texas, a cryptid known as the Lake Worth Monster or the Greer Island Goat Man is said to roam Greer Island and the surrounding area near Lake Worth. Although this story doesn't take place at the lake, it takes place by another close lake, which I'm not going to share the name for privacy reasons. Anyway, when we were kids, my cousin, who was 8 and male, lived by this lake, and my sister, 10, female, and myself, a 12-year-old male, as well as his other cousin, 13-year-old male, were invited over for the weekend. While we were over there, we heard strange noises during the night, similar to an elk bugle. This was the loudest when my uncle drove us through the woodland on the shore. One night, when staying up playing Animal Crossing, this was about 2012 and New Leaf had just released it, we heard these noises and looked out the window to see a gray, hairy, humanoid figure with horns and hooves standing on the neighbor's roof. Needless to say, this was the most terrified I had ever been. After this, we just hid in his room, closed all the windows and blinds, then made a fort so we felt safer. We were kids after all. We didn't get our aunt and uncle though because my cousin had a baby brother that we didn't want to disturb. We were worried that if he woke up, the crying would attract the goat monster, so the parents never heard anything about the sighting. Story number 3, Pen Crawler. I live in a rural part of Pennsylvania. This was a few years ago. I was trying to quit smoking. I wasn't doing the best job. My wife didn't like it, so I was making a valiant effort, but I'd been a smoker for over 2 decades, so it wasn't easy. She wanted me to go cold turkey, but I didn't think that was a good idea. Instead, I was kind of secretly weaning myself off of them. I think she knew, but didn't say anything because at least I was making an effort. It had been a particularly stressful day at work, and I was really jonesing for a cigarette. It had been a few days, so I snuck outside and went to the back of our property. I know it was bad, but I'd shower afterwards and hope my wife wouldn't be the wiser. Just as I flicked the lighter, I see something move out of the corner of my eye. It looked to be about 40 feet away. It was crouched and looked like the outline of a human. My initial thought was that there was some fool prowling around scoping out houses to break into. We were rural, but that didn't mean that there weren't junkies who would break in and steal a few electronics to pawn off to buy some drugs for their next fix. I hadn't lit up my cigarette yet. I just stood there watching and waiting to see if he noticed me. It was a full moon, but there were a lot of trees. All of a sudden, it stands up. Its body is far taller than a human. I can see its outline, and it's very thin, with long, spindly arms and an elongated head. It didn't appear to be wearing clothes, and its torso was far disproportionate to its waistline. I was completely petrified. I couldn't move. I waited to see if it was going to come my way or take off the other way. It lifted its head in a gesture like it was sniffing the air. I could have sworn it was staring right at me, but it was too dark to see any facial features. Then, it just took off at a full sprint towards the woods. When I say run, I mean way faster than a human could run. Needless to say, I lost my craving for a cigarette and did my own sprint back to the house. My wife caught me coming inside and suspected I was doing exactly what I was, but when she saw I was visibly shaken and shared my story, she believed me. I did internet research and saw that something called crawlers are a popular cryptid in this area, and I'm pretty sure I just saw one. Needless to say, I didn't try to sneak out back and have a cigarette for a long time. I'm pretty sure that it was the infamous crawler, and ironically, it kind of helped progress my resolve to quit smoking. Story number 4, Being Stalked. This is a story my dad told me. I'll recount it exactly the way he told me. Me and my buddies had been planning this hunting trip for months, and finally the day had come. The 5 of us, all experienced hunters, set out for a remote cabin in the wilderness, eager for a weekend of adventure. The first few days were uneventful, filled with laughter and good spirits, but on the 3rd night, our peace was shattered by strange noises coming from outside. We cautiously stepped out of the cabin to investigate, but all we saw was darkness. Then it appeared. A tall, thin figure emerged from behind the trees, its skin as pale as snow and its eyes glowing. We knew immediately what it was, a Wendigo, a demonic spirit that had lived in the wilderness and preyed on humans. We ran back to the cabin and locked ourselves inside, trying to figure out a way to survive the night. The Wendigo continued to stalk us, trying to break through the doors and windows. Its howls echoed through the forest, sending chills down our spines. We huddled together, clutching our weapons, but we were no match for the strength of the Wendigo. It seemed to grow more and more aggressive as the night wore on, and we were sure it would be our end. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the Wendigo disappeared as the sun started to rise. We emerged from the cabin shaken, but alive. From that day on, we never went back to that remote cabin ever again. The encounter left a deep impact on us, and we were forever changed. Well, Rosebuds, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Before I do the reveal for our creative fictional story, help out our small channel and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Maybe share it with a friend. It really helps out the algorithms for us to grow faster. Also, what's your opinion about cryptids? Undiscovered species or paranormal? Alright, on to our imposter story reveal. Story number 3, Pen Crawler. The second to last story about the guy trying to quit smoking was completely made up. I got inspiration from this story because at the back of our property, there's a line of trees, and in the evening, this can be really creepy. One summer evening, just as the sun had gone down, my teenage son was finishing up mowing the lawn. He went to put the lawnmower in the shed near the tree line at the back. He turned his head and saw a white face that was peeking around the shed, and then it retreated. It scared the crap out of him, and he told me about it, and I did believe him. However, we both wonder if that was a cryptid or paranormal. It wasn't a person because if they'd run off, it would have made a ton of noise in the crunching leaves. So his experience kind of sparked a story idea. I guess you got 5 stories instead of 4 today, Rosebuds. I hope you enjoyed all of them. Anyway, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care and stay creepy.